And for more, we're joined by Amanda Xiao, who is senior analyst at International Crisis Group. Now, Amanda, China has reacted with tough rhetoric, trade sanctions, even flexing its military muscle close to Taiwan's shores. All of this is not unexpected, but some analysts say it reveals Beijing's insecurity about Washington's changing stance towards Taiwan. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that Beijing has been quite clear and consistent for over the last year, really, about its concerns about how Washington is expressing its support for Taiwan. Over the course of the Biden administration, what we've seen so far is that Washington is deepening its unofficial cooperation with Taiwan. It's begun to reframe the Taiwan issue as one that's international. And it's been more proactive, especially following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, in helping shore up Taiwan's defense as a means of deterring Beijing's aggression. So in that sense, yes, I think Beijing has been fairly consistent in the lead up to this visit about its concerns. From their perspective, they think that Washington has been backsliding from its commitments made under the One China policy.
And in response to this perception, what other moves do you think Beijing will come up with?
I think what we've seen so far represents quite an escalation from the level of military activity before. Now, the exercises aren't supposed to start until tomorrow, so it remains to be seen what will actually happen. But if it goes through as announced, and here China is promising military exercises as well as live-fire missile tests in 6 different areas, and compared with the last Taiwan Strait crisis, the areas where the exercises will be taking place are extremely close to Taiwan. Some are even within Taiwan's territorial sea. And so in that sense, it does represent quite an escalation in terms of China trying to demonstrate its military strength.
And this escalation of tension, some say it's also a distraction for Xi Jinping from the economic troubles and the frustration within China about the COVID-19 restrictions at home. Some say it's a good opportunity to drum up some nationalist sentiment ahead of a key political meeting to secure Mr. Xi a 3rd term in office. What's your take?
Yeah, I think that on the whole, the leadership generally prefers a relatively stable and quiet external environment in the months leading up to a party congress. These are, after all, extremely important political transition events. And this is the time period when the leadership is really very focused on domestic priorities. And as you suggested, there are a number of issues right now within China itself. But of course, this opportunity to demonstrate China's strength and resolve does, I think, ultimately benefit Xi Jinping and his desire to secure a 3rd term, which is highly likely.
And at this point, Ms. Pelosi has made a very strong show of support for Taiwan, saying that the U.S. will preserve democracy on the island. Does this represent a shift in America's long-standing policy of strategic ambiguity?
I don't think it represents a shift in terms of U.S. strategic ambiguity. That policy really refers to ambiguity around whether the U.S. would militarily intervene in a Taiwan contingency, that is, in a scenario in which China militarily invaded Taiwan. I think, though, that Speaker Pelosi's visit does really highlight the level of support that Taiwan has from Congress in particular. This trip has been incredibly high profile. And in her remarks so far here in Taipei, she's really barely mentioned China at all. Rather, the focus has really been on the commitments that the U.S. has made to Taiwan. And I think that will be read as provocative from Beijing's perspective.
Let's shift gears to focus on Taiwan's leader. What does President Tsai Ing-wen gain from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit?
Yeah, I think that on the whole, given the way in which there was so much public discussion around this trip and, the perceived stakes around whether Pelosi came to Taipei or not has meant that this political win for Taipei is all the larger now that she has made it. And you've seen that the Taiwanese have really sought to amplify that. Her landing in Taipei, to the meeting with President Tsai, to this press conference that we're seeing right now, these were all live streamed and made extremely public. And so I'm sure that for President Tsai and her party, the DPP, there will be political benefits. But I think on a whole, this visit was a big political win for Taiwan more generally. After all, Taiwan only has formal relations with 13 countries, and this visit for them will help to normalize continued exchanges with countries with whom they only have unofficial relations. And that's what they hope will continue down the line.
And, despite all of China's aggressive posturing, some analysts say that Beijing doesn't really want an active military conflict with Washington and its allies, at least not just yet. What could serve as a tipping point for China?
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely right. I don't think that Beijing wants a conflict with Washington right now. There's no signal coming out of Beijing that would indicate otherwise. As to what would be a tipping point, I think, of course, if Washington came out publicly in support of formal independence for Taiwan, that would be the sort of red line that has been traditionally understood as triggering a potential Chinese military invasion of Taiwan. But in terms of other risks, though, it's good to point out that given that there are going to be, over the next couple of days, so many military movements and a large number of warships and warplanes in close proximity, there's always the danger of risky encounters, of an accidental collision, and of miscalculation if the three parties don't handle the situation carefully.